Welcome to the Why Not podcast with me, Chrissy Hawkins. In a world where everybody always asks you why, I'm here to ask why not. I'm going to do that by breaking down the mindsets of guests and my own to figure out what makes people say, why not? Hi guys, welcome back to Why Not. So I have an interview today with Charlie Norton Sherwood, and he is actually a strength and conditioning coach with the Arsenal under 14s team. So today we talked about a little bit about the structure of like strength and conditioning for children, teens, like how it works in football, maybe things you might not realise about football, and like how technical it actually can be, and it's not just running around the pitch. And yeah, it's just a bit of track. Talk a bit about his background as well, and yeah, that's pretty much mostly what we covered. So as ever, guys, sit back and relax or walk and listen. But here's my episode with Charlie Norton Sherwood. Okay, hi guys, welcome back to Why Not. So today I have another guest. I have got Charlie Norton Sherwood with me. So he's a strength and conditioning coach who works with the Arsenal Academy. So welcome to the podcast, Charlie. How are you?
Good. Thanks very much for having me on, Chrissy.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming on. So would you like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm currently based in London, working as a strength and conditioning coach in Arsenal's Academy. So I haven't been here very long, coming up to almost a year over the summer now. And I majorly work with the kind of younger ages. So my main age group would be under 14s, and then help out with some of the other ages between 12s to 16s where needed.
All right, cool. How did you get into that?
As in, how did I get into like S&C and fitness in general, or my specific role at Arsenal?
We'll start with that and then move to Arsenal.
Okay, cool. It actually started, I think I was probably about like 12, 13, and my mom started going to like Pilates classes.
Yeah.
And when she'd go to the class, she'd come back and show me a few exercises. So then I just start like religiously doing them every day, and I just kind of got like hooked onto training. And that's when you're starting to like read at the time, like men's health magazines and those kind of things were really big. So you'd start reading them and picking up like training tips. And I just got more involved and enthusiastic into the kind of training process. And then I did, because that kind of influenced what I did in university. So then I went to do sports science, and then that kind of path led me towards being an S&C coach.
Oh, that's really cool. So how did you end up in Arsenal?
Yeah, so I first came to the UK to do an internship at Leicester City in their football club, working with their academy.
Oh, cool.
So that was my first kind of taste of S&C within football. And then luckily after that year internship, I got a full-time role within the academy there, mainly working with the Thai academy. And then in the summer just gone, I left my role at Leicester to move to London. And then when I came back here, I was just applying for jobs. And then luckily I got the role at Arsenal.
Oh, that's deadly. So how old did they start? Does their academy start?
Yeah. Well, as with like any football team, they start like very young in terms of they would have like pre-academy age groups right from like under 7, under 8, all the way up to under 23s. But it's the same as like your local Sunday league team would, like they'd run football clubs or football teams for that young as well.
They're like watching kids in a sense from that young to potentially be in the Premiership.
Yeah, they're just trying to identify talented kids and try and bring them into the system.
And what's it like doing S&C for under 18s, and in like, is it the same as adults or is there a difference?
Yeah, then it would be. So the main age group that I work with now at Arsenal would be the under 14s, and that'd be hugely different in terms of how we kind of approach more senior athletes, because a lot of these kids are at different aspects of their kind of growth and maturation spectrum, in terms of some might be more along their lines of being physically developed than others. So that might alter how we kind of approach training. But because they're so young, it's just teaching them how to train, teaching them like the fundamental movement patterns, and then also trying to like install good movement on field as well, in terms of, okay, how to run efficiently, how to change your direction well. Whereas maybe with the older ages, you can start to chase some like outputs and actual adaptations more. We're kind of in a learning aspect or learning environment now, while still trying to work on some of those physical attributes.
That's really interesting. Do you find it easier to work with the younger age groups or the older age groups?
Um, each brings their like own challenges,
Yeah.
especially with this age group because you have so many people on like different aspects of their maturation. You'll have some who are really like developed and some who are going through like their growth spurt. So they're like changing height at like huge kind of velocities and rates. So you have to be so conscious about like what they're going throughout the week. Um, and also I find with kids like they're a lot more ruthless in terms of it. They're not liking something they're going to tell you straight away. Whereas with the older athletes, they might like suffice and just go through it. And that brings its own thing because you still want those older athletes to enjoy their session. So with the kids, you'll find out straight away if they're not enjoying it and then be like, okay, I've got to change it. But with the older athletes, you might have to like just build better relationships to understand what they're enjoying or not.
And do you find any of the older ones, or I don't know, because I suppose you're mostly with the younger ones, but the older ones struggle more to take direction in a sense that, like, you know, at this point, I suppose if you're getting into the higher academies, you probably have a good chance of going pro. Do they start to get a bit of an ego or?
Um, not hugely. Like in my old role, I got to experience working with some of the older athletes, which was great. But at the end of the day, if you just like they are adults, so it's just treating them as adults and having conversations like you would like someone to have with you about your training and try and involve them in that process. I think that kind of ends up making that process a lot more smooth.
Yeah, fair. And how often would the under 14s be training?
So we train 3 times a week and then we play a game once per week. One session, we might have a little double session. So on Tuesdays we're in, Thursday we sometimes have a double session. So that would involve the lads coming out of school a tiny bit earlier, coming into Arsenal. They might have education support within Arsenal. Then we do our first session, we have a little gym session. They might have video analysis. And then we have our second session of the day. Saturday we train, light session, and then Sunday would be our main game day.
Okay, so they're working quite a bit, like, and doing skill.
Yeah.
So you did sports science in DCU. What is
Yep.
that like as a degree? Like, is it coaching or is it more like on the academic side?
So the degree title at DCU was Sports Science and Health, which was cool because it gave you like a really broad intro into so many different topics in terms of, okay, are you going to go on to the more health related aspects of sports science, or are you going to go on to the more like sports science performance related aspects? So it's nice with that regard. They do try and give you like a mixture of kind of, okay, academic knowledge based experience, but some kind of coaching modules as well. But the best thing that I got from like my degree at DCU was they gave us like an opportunity to go and actually get some work experience.
Okay.
So within that time frame, I think it was like 6-7 months, I got to go and do an internship as an S&C coach. And that was great because that like kind of solidified, okay, this is what I want to do. So then when I got back from my final year in DCU, I was able to kind of focus everything to enabling me to become like an S&C coach. So I got to do other kind of internships in that last year. And that was another good thing about DCU is just like I got to like meet some really great people who helped me a lot in those early stages.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that was missing. I went to DC as well, but I did communications.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, that's really we didn't have any internships like that. So you didn't really like you came at the end of it going, what do I do?
Yeah.
So evidently I didn't follow the communications. But
How did you then end up where you are now?
I like training for years and then and I like teaching, but I'm not very good with children. So I was like, oh, teaching adults to exercise. That's kind of how it came about. But yeah, it's I still like I did audio production, so I still did a
Oh,
podcast
cool.
now. So I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the 3 years weren't wasted.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And it's so much for like just kind of pursuing something that you enjoy so much, like with the whole fitness related aspects. Like I don't think I can imagine doing really anything else, just because I enjoy it so much.
How do you find that as well? Like, so like I'm assuming you work out and enjoy that yourself for as well as your job. How do you find that working that with your like that's your job, but it's also your like hobby on the side?
Yeah, good question. Um, so my main sport that I'd pursue outside of my job would be weightlifting, and I'd go to a gym here in London. I I try and go there like 3 days a week. And when I go there, the sessions are coached. So I don't really have to think about anything. I don't have to think myself, okay, what am I going to do today? Because they're just going to tell me what to do, which is something great in of itself, because it allows me to kind of escape a little bit from my job and everything, because your roles are completely reversed. Whereas in my job, I'm the coach, I'm telling people what to do. Whereas when I go there, it's the complete opposite. I get to just unwind, switch off, and I just focus on the task at hand, which is really nice.
Oh yeah. Do you find anyone, like, if you told people you're a coach who gets coached, does anyone kind of like, can't you do that for yourself?
Yeah, sometimes, but I always like refrain it in the context of it's just so nice and stress-free having someone take you through that process.
Yeah.
And it's one of like my main hobbies also outside of work, even though my work is very fitness related within the context of football and training for that sport. It's nice to then just go and do something a little bit different with regards to the weightlifting and being coached.
Yeah. And did you play football when you were younger?
At a very poor level. I was like the D team in Malahide United, and then played in school a little bit, but like, yeah, never very promising.
Oh yeah, no, that's why. I was wondering how you got into football if you didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was mainly on like the S&C side of things, that I got involved in the sport, and now I've just been lucky enough to remain involved, or have been remained involved now for a few years.
Yeah. And was it the fact that you used to play kind of drew you towards football, or was it to do with, like, say, the biomechanics of it, or was it like
It was just like a nice opportunity to get that internship at Leicester. So that's how I first got involved in the sport. And my boss at the time was a guy called Kevin Paxton. And I always like appreciate him taking me over, because like I didn't really have much experience in football before then. But I learned a lot throughout that year. And then luckily enough, after that year, I got the job in Leicester and again, kept learning. So it's something that's always going to kind of be a presence in my life, in terms of if I'm staying within the sport, you're always going to have to learn more about the sport, because when you're having conversations with the sport coaches, the level of detail and what they see on the field is amazing. So it's just trying to now for myself, try and get a bit of carryover to that.
Yeah. Would you think people don't realize that about football? So, like, you know, it looks like the lads are just booting the ball around. Say, for instance, for someone who doesn't watch football, but there's a lot more that goes on in it.
Yeah, I would do, especially when you kind of being involved in the process of trying to train and teach young athletes kind of, or young football players, kind of like the successful and unsuccessful methods of trying to play. And especially say with Arsenal, they have their like kind of style and philosophy. So trying to teach those young players that. So yeah, you do get a greater appreciation for the game.
Yeah. Would each club have their own kind of philosophy?
Yeah.
Now, you may have to say this if you work there, but are you an Arsenal fan?
No, not at the moment. It's hard not to support them though, because you're at the club and
When you're working there, yeah.
well. Yeah. Well, if anyone asks me who I support, I say Arsenal under 14s, because it's the team I work with.
But when it comes to the Premiership, who are you in with?
Yeah, no, still Arsenal 14s. That's the main team.
Good answer. In case your boss is listening. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Just in case, you never know.
So, like, what are some, I suppose, misconceptions you see about S&C? So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's strength and conditioning.
Within maybe someone who like doesn't understand the kind of role, it might be seen as, okay, you're only in the gym, that's all you do, you're just working on like strength, and you're trying to, I don't know, always have your players or athletes like working really hard and going max out. Whereas there's so much more within the role in terms of, so say my role within itself, it's about having conversations with the coaches about how we're going to approach the training weeks and how we're going to design sessions and how we're going to manipulate sessions to maybe target different physical attributes in terms of, okay, do we want to play maybe more small-sided games and really overload some of the change of direction mechanics? Or do we want to open up the game and try and get some like high-speed running and sprinting involved? And then it's also on field as well, trying to coach certain movements in terms of paying attention to how our athletes are running, giving them more opportunities to explore different movement options. It's kind of aspects like that, which probably people don't know is involved within the role.
I think strength and conditioning, in a sense, is really poorly named for what it is.
Yeah. I think like it does also like depend on your role within where you are working, because there will be some kind of roles where you're labeled as a strength and conditioning coach, and that might be kind of like all that you do in terms of, okay, you're just working with athletes in the gym trying to improve their physical capacities there, or if it's more of like an all-encompassing kind of picture.
Yeah. And like how, like with your do you kind of coach them as a group, or would you say like, say some of your lads, you're saying some are more mature than others, like would you be like, okay, you guys have to do this because you're at a different growth level and you guys do this? Do you break them down into little groups, or do you kind of keep them all together with like small variations, if that makes sense?
Yeah, a little bit of both, where we will have, say, our one main gym session of the week, and again, because of where they are, we're still trying to teach them so much in terms of, okay, how to train, how to do all these movements properly, so when that they go up through the academy, that they can begin to kind of really chase improving certain physical attributes within the gym. So to answer that question, we would have like a general kind of theme for the day, or a theme for the session, or the program outlined. We might alter it based on where they are when they come in the day, because they might be like, oh, listen, I'm really tired and really stiff today. And it's just taking those things within context. But then we'd also have other individual sessions where we open up more options towards the athletes in terms of, okay, you're coming in today, what would you like to work on? Is that power, is that strength? What attributes of your game do you feel you're lacking and feel you can improve within, say, like the gym situation, and how can we help with that?
Yeah. And like, did the change as well depend on their position?
It would more, for me at the moment, it would more depend on where they feel they're lacking for some of those more individual based gym sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
The only like major change might be, say, there is a different approach to, say, the goalkeepers and the outfield players, where we'll have like little goalkeeper club sessions is what we call it, where we're trying to bridge the gap between the general physical capacities we pursue within the gym and then what the goalkeepers are doing on field.
Yeah, I suppose they do, in a sense, the least movement of the lot of them.
Yeah, they would do like the least movement from say, if we're thinking about a GPS spectrum in terms of like total distance and sprints covered, but the amount of like jumps and dives that they have to go through is amazing. And especially when you see them training, they go through so much, and they are like, I don't know, it's a very demanding one, because sometimes a staff member might have to jump in into goals if one of the keepers is somewhere else. And yeah, it's surprising how hard it is.
Did they have to like deal with a lot of goalkeepers like impact as well, like impact injuries? Because if they're not flying into the ground, they're flying into someone half the time.
Yeah. And I think that's one of like the wonderful things some of the goalkeeper coaches do in terms of trying to help them with certain efficient landing mechanics, with regards to that. And that's something that we'll also try and target within like our GK club sessions at the club. And they also like, they're very quick learning, and they're like such efficient movers in some of those aspects in terms of jumping and their ability to control that landing onto the ground.
I suppose that's another thing like people would never think of, really, would they? Like that there's landing mechanics and
Yeah. Well, I presume like anyone would learn pretty quickly, because if you're going to fall on the floor, and if you're like, oh, that hurt a bit, I better change that for next time, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Do you find the younger guys pick things up very quickly?
Yeah, I think as with anywhere, you'll always have people who pick things up incredibly quick, and people who need a little bit more time understanding certain concepts, or explained in a different way, or thought in a different way.
Yeah, I suppose, like, because they're kind of in that mid frame, isn't it? Like kids, like just like that. You tell them to do something, they do it, and then you tell an adult to do the same movement, and they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
It's just like that middle point where they're like, if they're under 14, it's like not quite child, not quite an adult.
Yeah. And you'll have that, because they're all like now experiencing like adolescence and going through that, and they're trying to find out who they are, or what their personalities are, and exploring in that circumstance. So that's something you always have to be conscious of.
Oh, so yeah, that's even more like, I suppose it's a lot of pressure for them as well, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, there's a lot on them. But I think the chance of playing up is an amazing experience for them, and they get like looked after well at the club, which is also another amazing thing. But yeah, there are high expectations of them, especially if they want to succeed and try and go on to like the next level, which would say be under 16s at our club. Because I'm trying to think back to what I was like for an under 14. I was probably useless.
weren't in the Arsenal academy then.
No, certainly not. Barely tie my own shoelaces.
Is there a lot of rules around what they can and can't do?
Within reason, at the club, we do have like certain, not demands, but expectations from them. But at the end of the day, they are still kids. So it is allowing a little bit of flexibility in that.
Yeah, as well as like, yeah, you have to be kind of fair because they are still learning. Like, there'll be probably much stricter kind of, not rules, but like I suppose expectations in the older guys.
Yeah, you never want to take away also like the enjoyment of the sport and the enjoyment of coming in and training at Arsenal. Because we do, like, they are in the building quite a lot, so we want to make that process as like enjoyable as possible.
Yeah. And what's the youngest they could end up potentially playing for the club?
Well, like I was saying,
like as like senior team.
Oh, it's always like based on their ability. It's so hard to kind of define what that might be. But I think like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure the record of the youngest person but I'm sure there's been like 16, 17-year-olds playing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen that as well. Or you hear a lot of 19-year-olds now, and I'm like, oh, that's how.
Yeah. Now 16, 17 might be like the overall thing. I'm not sure specifically at Arsenal who was.
Yeah.
Debut.
They have some young enough lads on the senior team, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
So with yourself, what is your? So you say you weightlifting. Like, what's your favorite thing to do when you're weightlifting?
Do myself? With weightlifting, you kind of go through phases of being really good at one of the lifts and your other lift is going really poorly, or being really good at the other. So at the moment, my snatch is a little bit better than my clean and jerk, or it feels more comfortable.
Yeah.
But then I also just love myself, just doing some of the accessories as well. But like the best thing about like our field is just being able to like experiment with so many different things. So I know you've had Keane O'Brien on in the past.
Yeah.
And like I love seeing what he's doing in terms of his training, and maybe trying to incorporate a few of that little bits into my own accessories.
The like single rep kind of stuff he's doing at the moment, or
or the clusters over the 10 minutes.
I've been trying to do that myself actually, and it's, I don't know, it's so like in myself alien to do just one rep.
Yeah.
I think I kind of do like more kind of like say bodybuilder style training. So I'm like, wait, cool. One? No, yeah. I need to do more than that.
Yeah. And that's what's so nice about that kind of style training. It's like something completely different for a lot of people.
Yeah. Do you think people get stuck in the same thing over and over?
Yeah, definitely. I know even within myself, like I can be guilty of that. And then if that drip feeds into my programming, that's where I try and always keep a conscious theme running of, okay, is this getting stale? Keep seeing how the kind of athletes or the football players are responding, or if they're enjoying gym. Trying to have aspects within the sessions that make it a little bit competitive. So we might measure some of their jump heights, and we're seeing, okay, can you compete, or can you beat your score from last week, doing certain aspects like that to try and like not make it stale and just monotonous week to week.
I suppose, yeah, because I suppose in a sense that like part of training is you are repeating a lot of the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
Which can get very boring, but it's how you put it together that makes it continually interesting.
Yeah, that's a great way of framing it.
Yeah. And especially I think I find, well, I work with kind of Gen Pop, but like they kind of in a sense think that it has to be crazy, difficult, mad to make a change. Whereas it's like especially with athletes, because you're getting such like small changes.
Yeah.
It's constantly getting that stuff right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that's what, when we're talking about like the misconceptions of S&C, when you think you have to be like, okay, we're going to do all this work and we're going to like pummel you into the ground and you're not going to stop. It's very much different to that, because if you think about it, maybe like trying to invest in a stock and you've got, I don't know, £100 to spend. If you chuck it in all at the one time, you might be at risk the next week the stock decreases loads and you've lost so much, where what you really want to do is like slowly drip feed in the amount you have to spend maybe over the course of the year. And that's the same with kind of our philosophy my philosophy with regards to training, in terms of, okay, we're not going to go crazy amounts right out of the gates. It's going to be drip feeding how much we think they need at that time, and then trying to improve it from there.
I think that stock thing, that was a really, really good analogy, like just popping it in and like
Oh,
gradually, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's not mine. I've definitely heard someone say it before.
Oh no, that's grand though, but like it's a really good way of doing it, because like as you said, like people have a habit of going all in, or
Yeah,
you'll see it like with the Gen Pop in particular, like 6 week transformation, all in, let's go. And
yeah,
then it's like by the end of it, they're burnt out and done.
yeah. Because that's
It's-
with, say, the ages now. Like, I really want the athletes to have a healthy relationship with, say, S&C, and also training within the gym, because I think it plays such a huge part in trying to have like a long and productive career within sport, in terms of, okay, hopefully trying to reduce injuries, and hopefully then also producing increases in some of their physical capacities.
yeah, it's great as well that you have that, like you're saying, like you're saying, make sure they have it right when they get older, so they're getting the foundations in now,
Yeah,
and when they move on, they'll be obviously it's going to be quicker to go through the programming because they have the foundation set down.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Whereas, like, you know, I'm sure you've seen it, lads that age who go into a gym, go to the bench press and put up as much weight as they can and go about
yeah,
a quarter down and push back up,
yeah,
like, you know.
yeah.
And trying to get them, like, because even I've done gym programs for teens, you're trying to explain it to them and they're just like, and then you see them next day doing exactly what you told them not to do.
Yeah, yeah. There's always going to be some aspects of that being like, I literally told you how to do this last week. What's going on this week then? So you do have to repeat yourself a lot, but again, they're like the kids at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you find you have that much with them, or is it like since it's been drilled in them so much, they kind of just go, okay, no, it's the way it's supposed to be?
They're still always going to, because we're going to continuously try and teach them new things, in terms of, like, literally yesterday we were just introducing the front squat, so it's trying to get like that nice front rack position, trying to move through range in that aspect. So yeah, and at the start they'll always struggle with certain things, but it's just going to be a time situation in terms of teaching them these certain things.
Do any of them, like, I suppose, as I said, like you're gradually bringing them, do any of them try to run ahead, or do they kind of go, have they been schooled enough to, like, no, okay, this is the process, we do the process?
Yeah, we'll stick to the process, but also we won't hold them back in terms of, if someone like has absolutely nailed the technique and wants to put on a little bit of weight, yeah, go for it. We're never going to hold them back, as long as they are kind of showing the relevant technical competencies that we want to see.
Yeah, no, that's like I meant, like the ones who are like ones who want to go heavier without nailing it.
Oh yeah, we'll always kind of, okay, that's not our priority here. We want to get you moving well, and then we can look to pursue loading.
Yeah. It's probably handy, as I said, like, because you're drilling into them constantly, like they're probably like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, with those like gym sessions every week, yeah, they do begin to get it.
Yeah. Do they, how like, what are, say, I suppose, common injuries in football that maybe that you're trying to avoid with the training as well?
Yeah, so say for instance, within, or kind of any of these adolescent, especially like that 14 age bracket, you will get like certain growth related injuries, such as like Osgood's in the knee. So it's in that context that you're trying to like modify or watch their training load. So we would have those like GPS units where we're kind of tracking their like total distance, their change of directions, their explosive distance, and their like high speed running and sprints over the course of the week. And it's making sure that there's no crazy spikes week to week, in terms of, okay, are we gradually building up their workloads throughout the season? Are we giving them time where we kind of ease off them a little bit, let them recover, and then go back onto building their workload up?
Yeah. I suppose, yeah, you have to be more careful with them growing. That's very interesting when you think about that. Like, you know, as I said, like, you don't know what their body's going through.
Yeah, and that's not saying anybody will experience any of these injuries, because some of them might just completely fly through their growth spurt, and we don't want to hold them back because we think they might get injured. It's just paying attention to how they're like feeling and performing week to week, and if they feel okay, if we've highlighted that they are growing through their growth spurt, it might just be being a little extra cautious around looking after them and having regular conversations with them to see how they're responding to the training week.
And would you talk a lot about them as well, like, as in see how they're getting on, like, mentally as well?
Yeah, well, like, I know myself, like I try and catch up with all our like athletes every day, and it's an easy conversation, in terms of you're just talking everyone, making sure you're interested in them, asking them how they are, and it's those conversations and those like little aspects that I think, if are performed consistently well, lead to like a good team dynamic, because you're going to be able to tell pretty soon if you ask someone every day how they are. You're going to be able to tell if they kind of, there's a little hesitation there, if they're not looking away, or if they're not, sorry, if they're not like making eye contact with you, if they're kind of a bit like, oh, I feel okay. And that allows you to have a further conversation. Okay, well, what's going on? How's your body feeling? How's everything? How did you respond to the training session we've just done? Were you any sore?
Yeah. So yeah, it is true. Like if you're in with them, like what, 3 times, 4 times a week, you get to know the different things. If they say they're fine, you're not fine. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good though as well, because you do have to kind of keep an eye on that. As you said, like they're at such like at the age they're at, like, you know, they're all finding themselves as well. So like maybe training's fine, but could be something outside that's happened to them, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And that's what like I've like at Arsenal is done so well in terms of that there's so many like external supports within the club in terms of like the safeguarding officers, and then there's also like a psychologist within the club that if players are going through certain things that they can have conversations with these people, and that's a wonderful resource to have.
Yeah, you definitely need it, especially like not even just at that age, but at all ages, like, you know, because there's obviously a lot of like, especially the older players get a lot of abuse, which can't be like, you need someone to talk to about that, you know?
Yeah, there is so much pressure placed on, especially like those senior athletes in terms of trying to perform week to week and have everyone trying to criticize everything you do. Yeah, it can be like a pretty daunting thing.
Yeah, so
especially
like
even when I think about it, like I don't know if I could handle that.
Oh, I don't think I could either. Like, do they have to kind of, in a sense, as they get older, probably not at this age, but as they get older, maybe do like kind of training with them and that, in a sense, like, you know, with the psychologist going through how to deal with that stuff? Or
yes, some of those, like they would have like sessions with, say, a sports psychologist, depending on the club, depending on how they run things, and they'll kind of work on certain things with regards to that, certain things regarding like, say, performance goals. So yeah, it's pretty cool, some of the support that the athletes get.
Yeah, I just think it's I just remember after especially obviously after the Euros, what happened there, like you just like you'd like to know that the clubs have that support, because unfortunately you can't stop the people who did that stuff, but you can only support the players as much as you can, you know?
Yeah.
Here's one actually that's completely about, like, as a football fan and stuff like that, what is the biggest misconception you found about football as a sport?
Oh, yeah, that's a hard one. All my ones would refer back to training, and in terms of like the demands that would be placed on some of the athletes is quite high, and the inability sometimes of people to put themselves in the player's shoes. So like, for instance, like you see those first team players with like, I don't know, 80,000 people watching them and everyone in the crowd shouting everything or sometimes awful things, and they just haven't got any recognition of what they're going through. No, I don't, because I've never been in their shoes, but like it's trying to picture what they're experiencing. There's certain things like that, or some of the comments being like, oh, how did they not think of that, or those kind of things where they probably have in relation thought about that, like certain things.
That's a really good point. Like, it's it's very easy to sit in the stands or sit on your couch and be like, how the fuck did he miss that? When like you're not there, you're not in that instant, like there's a lot of split second decisions going on.
Yeah, and especially like the speed of the game, and then also you'll have like the old armchair quarterbacks, I think, which is like a frame that there's in this book called Think Again by Adam Grant, where they show no hesitation, always showing their opinion, without kind of considering all the external things going on.
Yeah, I think you need to remember as well, at the end of the day, they're human beings. Like,
100%.
And athletes do have bad days, and they, you know, just, you know, all the money in the world can't fix that.
Yeah, sure. Even like I know myself, I have bad days, but it's trying to be as consistent as we can. So yeah, it's just that when I have a bad day, I'm not like on telly performing, so no one's watching me or criticizing me, and that's the same with all those people who are very quick to criticize, that they're not on telly when they have their bad days. So to try and give them more affordances.
Yeah, I think as well, like that's a good point. Like, so if you have a bad day, if you want to sit on the couch all day and eat crisps and not talk to anyone, that's fine. But like, you know, Mo Salah can't do that. If he's got a match that day, like he has to get out there, and then people are going, why hasn't he scored for, was it 2 months or something like nearly? Like, well, you know. I have one other question, which is completely left of field of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. And that question is, what is the best advice that you've ever been given?
I've been lucky to have like some wonderful like people help me throughout my career, and there's always been like such great advice.
You can pick a few if you want.
Yeah. I think because they've all just kind of like amalgamated into like what I would then give advice to like other people trying to get into the career. So I think I've also said it in the past of just trying to remain who you are and be yourself as much as possible. Because like I've experienced it in the past where I've tried to be something I'm not because I thought that was the personality that you needed to kind of succeed within the field. And very quickly, like you begin to see that your athletes are kind of like finding you out essentially because they know when you aren't being yourself. So that's the best path forward. Also, if you want like a stable and long-term career, I think within any field, it's just trying to be yourself and remain present and enjoy the moment as much as possible, because if you try and do something or try and be something you're not, you will get found out, or you're not going to be able to withhold it for the whole time you're in that career.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think that's really good. They're kind of on the same strand or like same vein of advice, but yeah, really, really good. Yeah. Stop faking it, people.
Yeah.
But especially in our industry as well, like it is there is a lot of, I suppose, showboating.
Yeah, there is, but like listen, there's like so much that goes on with social media and trying to like put yourself out there. But I think at the end of the day, if you just always keep in mind, are you trying to do the best by the people that you're working with, and then worry about the rest later. So as long as at the end of the day, I can come home being like, okay, I tried to do the best by the athletes that I get to work with. Like that's a successful day for me.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can't do any more than that, really. Right. Yeah. So that is everything I have to ask you. So can you tell everyone where they can find you, Charlie?
I'm on Instagram. I think my handle is Charlie_N_S. But the main thing of how like I put out stuff that I'm doing or thinking about is I write a little blog, and I just write 500 words a week, and I call it 500 words a week. It's on the website cnsperformance.com, and that's where the blog is. But I share it on my Instagram every week when it goes up. But I just talk about like, I don't know, a very wide ranging topics in terms of self-help, self-development, thinking about other aspects of performance, certain training methodologies or modalities. Yeah, it's pretty like wide ranging. I just like to write what I'm going through or what I'm experiencing or what I'm learning.
That sounds really cool, actually. That's cool. Like every week, 500 words a week.
It's a bit of fun. Yeah, I started like maybe over a year ago, and I just enjoyed the process. It's helped me also like refine a lot of my thoughts, and try and say like my philosophy with regards to training, or my philosophy trying to like get myself to be a better person or a better coach.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good idea. I love that. Actually, go check that out now.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, just want to say, well, everyone as well, you can find me as usual at Chrissy H Fitness on Instagram and TikTok, and then my website is www.chrissyhawkins.com. And yeah, just want to say thanks again for joining us today.
No, thanks very much for having me. I hope I didn't waffle on into too many topics.
No, it was really interesting. Thank you again for listening to the Why Not podcast. It really means a lot that you are listening in, and I would love if you could please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or subscribe on Spotify. And always, I'd love to hear feedback personally, so if you do want to leave me a message and let me know how you found the podcast, please do.